Our boat, Goblin and Atlantic 42 catamaran, and I want to make sure that everybody understands that this boat was perfect, is perfect for our family, but it doesn't mean it's perfect for everybody.
Oh, well.
Don, those of you that remember back in 2015, 16, our family owned an F-25C called Elsie Pittick, and we did a lot of sailing on that boat and cruising actually also. And we decided that it was going to be a good time when Katie finished elementary school to leave and go cruising on a real boat far, far away instead of going to middle school. Because middle school is kind of generally a waste of time. And the rule was, to make this work, she had to do all of her schoolwork for middle school with us on board before we got done. So when she got back, she could go to high school. Right? That means we needed a boat that was a classroom and a home and, you know, was safe and comfortable and for everybody, as opposed to adventures on the high seas, right? That's not what we were about. So 5 things: safety, sailing performance, comfort, space, and self-reliance are the things that were really important and why we chose this platform. Safety, center cockpit. Nobody has to leave the cockpit to do anything, ever. If your 12-year-old is on watch and you're asleep and she needs to change something, she can do that without leaving the cockpit. You don't have to wake up. That's really great, right? In terms of her self-esteem, and in terms of you not getting worn out, it's a big deal to switch watch and say, you go, you're all good. See you in 4 hours. Wake me up if you have to, but don't leave the cockpit. There's no reason to ever leave the cockpit. You can see on the boat that the main sheet and traveler are behind the pilot house. You can't get hit by the main sheet, the traveler, the boom, any of that stuff in the cockpit. It has to take the pilot house out first before it gets you. It's not going to happen.
Did Chris design the boat with that in mind? I want to do it this way because it's safe. With the main.
Yeah, I think that's a big deal to him, that people can sail the boat without worrying when you're jibing, you're gonna get caught. It's a big main. Goes from one side to the other in a hurry, right? And except it's 15 feet behind you. You don't even know it's there. It's a little different than the F-25C. You kind of have to be on your game a little bit. Sailing performance was really important to us to be able to go everywhere we wanted to go sailing. We use the engines rarely and never to charge batteries. So we had lots of solar panels. Comfort, it's a huge deal when you're a family off doing stuff to really be comfortable all the time. I can't overemphasize that. If you go someplace and you anchor and you're going to be there for 3 weeks, you don't want to be doing this for 3 weeks. There was a boat that sailed down from Vancouver that was a converted trawler. And when we ran into it in the Marquesas, just looking all the way across the anchorage, it was rolling rail to rail the entire time they were there, even with their girdies out. And we went on board one night and had pizza with them. And the pizza flew from the galley into the other side of the boat at one point. And the husband, wife, and son were not in agreement about staying on board, right, at that point.
Yep.
Oh, look, it's working. Safety stuff. So we have 2 helms, outdoors and indoors. Indoors is behind a closing door inside a pilot house. Doesn't matter. It's sunny and hot. It's cold and wet, whatever. It's really nice to just be inside. Not having hats and sunscreen and, you know, it's great to be outside for a little while, but it's really nice to just be inside, hanging out, reading books, looking around, doing your thing. You go outside when you need to control stuff. You come back in here and hang out most of the rest of the time. 2 sets of swim steps with stairs on the back of the rudders. You can climb in and out of the water without any additional gear all the time. You can get in and out of your dinghy all the time. You don't have to come up to the side of the boat and figure out how to get over the gunnel and into the boat. 2 engine rooms with 2 engines with 2 separate fuel systems with 2 separate batteries with 2 you've already got 2 of everything. So if you have spares plus that, it's almost impossible to have a problem. Watertight, airtight, everything bulkheads with automatic fire extinguishers behind that. All the stuff that makes noise is behind these big, thick bulkheads. So you don't hear it if it's running. Watertight bulkheads up forward. We got rid of the 2 berths up forward because there's 3 of us. So I closed this up in a way that we could really hit something serious and not have water in the boat.
But you had storage there for like.
Yeah, put sails and stuff up there if you want, but I'm not sleeping up there. What are we doing there?
You pressed the button.
Am I supposed to hear better?
It works the
Great.
way that it was supposed to from the beginning.
Sorry,
Do for access hatches, secure access hatches for that.
to get in there?
Yeah.
Locker, Lumar hatches on deck,
So there's no access from the inside of the boat.
not easily, not quickly. But you don't need to go up there, so
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Space, so we had a daughter and the 2 of us. Daughter, she has her own room with her own head and her own everything that she can go in and do her homework for years, right? Do whatever she wants in there. This is her space. This is our space. And then there's communal living space. If you choose to go through the door and come into the communal living space, you're in the shop or the shower or this pilot house or the galley, you can elect to do that, but it's nice as a family to separate stuff. Jennifer's mom came with us for a couple months. She had her own space with her own head. She could disappear and not be part of the family dynamic, you know, even boats are small. It's nice to have space. Be prepared. So this is the last time you all saw me was me leaving to go do this. Was bought the boat and completely disassembled it. I took everything apart. I took the engines out. I took the sail drives out. I took the rig off. I took the whole electrical system out of the boat, the entire plumbing system. Took everything out of the boat and spent a year putting it all back together and replacing the things that needed to be replaced until it was done, worked, no problems. And we basically had no problems for 2 years.
Wow.
Everywhere we went, there were dead boats. Everywhere, dead boats. Because people buy boats and boats are complicated and there's lots of stuff. And if you haven't touched every nut, bolt and screw and you don't know how stuff goes, you know, things disappear through bulkheads and go someplace. It's really hard to fix it. And I got rid of a couple thousand pounds of stuff off this boat in between buying it and leaving. Stuff that didn't need to be there. There's no AC, no alternating current on our boat. There's no shore power charger. There's no there's no through hulls anywhere except in behind one of those bulkheads back there. Composting toilets.
Does it have skegs and dagger boards?
Yes, it has skegs and dagger boards.
They dry out on the skeg and the rudder or?
Yep. Which is convenient.
Yeah.
All right, so passage mode. We go from an F-25C that bombs around, right? With no effort, you're going fast. We used to cruise that boat with an inflatable on one trampoline and an El Toro on the other one. Because it would still go fast with just the main up, right? No other sails required, bomb around, have a great time. This boat works the same way. It's a light, big boat. There's the sail. Most of the time, the main was furled on the boom and that's it.
Really?
Yep. We averaged between 7 and 8 knots for the whole trip on a jib.
Wow. Well, it looks like a pretty big jib.
Yeah, it's 110% jib, but
Yeah.
the thing is, you've seen in the Vendée Globe, when boats get going fast, they're really uncomfortable. This boat, we call it the rodeo rocking bull. You get over 10 knots, it's going. And it really quickly goes from 10 to 14 to 16 to 20. And your 12-year-old is not driving when it's going 20 knots. Okay? And things are flying around and you're definitely not sleeping and you're not reading books. You're getting somewhere. So if you can get somewhere joyfully, happily, relaxed, you only have to worry about this one handle here. Everything else takes care of itself. It's really joyous to make passages when you're passing every boat around and you have one sail up.
Did you try and press it, like trying to get somewhere and
We did.
bump it up to?
We
14
did
or-
twice.
Yeah,
And we got where we wanted to go and it was absolutely miserable.
yeah.
Just,
Sometimes you need to do stuff. Though.
sometimes you have to do it. If you have it in the bank, it's great, but we don't have spring suspended chairs and all that stuff. There'll be a picture later of the boat leaving Hawaii where we're basically airborne on every wave.
Mhm.
It was not fun.
Wow.
Did you look at any other boats or this one just ticked all the boxes?
I've been sailing since I was little and I've been on lots and lots of boats, on lots of passages. And this is the one that it's core cell and epoxy. You can't sink it. You don't need a lifer. You have all this space. It sails like a dream. We had this sail built in New Zealand. This is us in Ecuador. I decided the jib we had was too big for the passages we were going to make from Marquesas to Hawaii and Hawaii to here, because it's pretty windy. And that jib did most of the work on those 2 passages.
Wow.
So
Just that jib.
just that jib.
Wow.
So instead of furling the bigger jib that overlaps the boom by, the mast by about that far,
Right.
we cut it down to 70% of that. That was it.
Almost a jib top, it's got a very high clue.
It's got a very high clue. It means you can always see under it from anywhere in the boat. You never have a blind spot anyplace.
So that didn't mess up your pointing ability or
Nope. A great sail, fabulous sail.
balance, bow was still balanced enough?
Enough.
How high would it point with that sail?
We can go through 90 degrees, no problem. And if you put the boards down, she goes to weather like a bandit.
Can you raise and lower the boards from the cockpit?
Yep. Absolutely. You can do everything from the cockpit. In fact, you can do, if the wheel's here, you can actually reach everything, including lowering the anchor, which you can see leave and go down in the water or come back up.
And the cockpit is behind the mast, but in front of the pilot house.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
right there. So,
Great view.
all right, so here we are going down the coast. This is San Miguel Island, the first Channel Island you get to. And I have this up to remind us, this is a beautiful bucolic day. It's beautiful, it's perfect, right? I'm listening to the weather. There's 3 other boats right over here. You can barely see one right there. I'm listening to the weather and it's saying there's going to be Santa Anas later. Like the winds for the fires that just happened down in Southern California. It's going to blow. It's going to blow 50. And we bugger on out of there. And the other boats aren't listening to the weather, even though we go by them and say, it's really going to howl in a little while. You guys need to get to the other side of the island. And they didn't. And they went up on the beach.
Oh, my.
I mean, it looks perfect, right?
Yeah.
Why leave? Can't be that bad. Can't be that bad. So paying attention to the weather, I spent between 2 and 4 hours a day, every day, the whole trip, looking at weather and paying attention to what was going on. You all know there's lots of models. The models don't agree. Sometimes one model's better where you are than other models, and that's really true. For a while, you'll be here and this model's working really well. You get a little farther along the way and that doesn't work very well anymore. You need this one. And you need to pay attention to that.
Using satellite data?
Yes. Absolutely. Santa Cruz Island, a little farther down the way. Different cruisers are different. So here we are, we've just met these people. This is us, this is an Oyster 55, couple from England with a full electric boat. Gorgeous boat, $1.5 million, $2 million. Full electric, meaning they have to run the generator to do anything. They have to run the generator to raise the sails. They have to run the generator to tack. They have to run the generator to make coffee. They have to, you know, when they wake up, because you can hear their boat fire up.
Wow, even to tack.
Yeah, because the sails are so huge on that boat that they have electronic winches.
Can't wind them in.
Gotta wind them in.
A battery on it to run.
Yeah, well, there's a problem with that boat, is that, you know, they like having everything going, the 2 deep freezes and the refrigerator. And the large screen television and the autopilot and the. Right, all the stuff. So they're basically, you know, a powerboat with sails on it. They made great passages. They've been around the world 1.5 times with that boat. But they weren't the greatest neighbors to have right next to you at 6 o'clock in the morning. Opposite. Boat from Canada. I sailed on this boat this year around Vancouver Island for 5 weeks. It was really fun. This guy built his boat on the beach in Ucluelet out of found wood.
Jeez.
As a shipwright, he rescued all those sail covers from the dumpsters in the marina where he keeps his boat. That's sort of a different lower budget program. We met him here in Capitola, California. Where do you think he was headed to?
New Zealand.
Fiji. He sailed there and back. Sailed upwind all the way back from Fiji.
Wow.
In that boat.
Awesome.
Did he design them?
He did not design it, but he built the entire thing himself about 40 years ago. Okay, so we get down the Mexican coast a little ways. We're in Magdalena Bay, and this is the first place that dinghies really come up as a thing. So you probably noticed we have a rigid rowing and sailing dinghy. Most people have inflatables with outboards on them. And you're cool if yours is bigger and it's got a bigger outboard. And you're even cooler if it's even bigger with an even bigger outboard.
And steering.
And steering, and it weighs 1,800 pounds. And you can't pull it up the beach. In fact, you can't even get it to the beach because it runs aground right there. And that's it. And you can't move it ever again. So we're anchored over here with 3 other families, and we row in and we go through the surf and we go into the mangroves and we go wandering around all day. And everybody else is stuck out here in the surf.
Really?
In their inflatables, trying to figure out what they're gonna do with their boat, because they get it to the surf line, then they have to get out of it to make it light enough, and they have to tip the motor up, and then they start pulling it, and they get to around here, and they're done. Because it's so heavy they can't move it anymore. But they're beautiful fiberglass, that stuff. So
And, you know, around here, just to describe the scene there, what's in the background, the white
dunes,
sand dunes?
miles and miles of sand dunes. So this is really the first image in the talk where I can say We got here and we said, oh, we could spend 6 months here. There's places to explore that go on and on and on forever.
Hills to hike.
Hills to climb, things to see,
Yeah.
stuff to do. And this is the first place that we just started to really, really slow down. We signed up for the Baja Ha Ha thing to get a discount some places and immediately figured out it was a good idea to let them go. Because there aren't really kids on those boats. Everybody's there to party their brains out. Yeah, and they're generally poorly behaved in terms of the local people don't really appreciate cruisers a lot of times because they don't really play nice with local people.
So you're talking about get on your boat, did you like have a stand-up paddleboard? I have an inflatable one on my trimaran and it's so nice.
We,
Just throw it in the water, jump in it and paddle in and.
yeah, and lots of people have them. They don't take up much space and they're great. We did not bring one. We ended up accumulating surfboards along the way. Katie learned how to surf on the trip. So we started accumulating surfboards, which was great. But we didn't intentionally bring any to start with. I had no idea she was gonna want to learn to surf and do it. And then Jennifer learned to surf. Okay, guess we're surfing now.
Nice.
So, you know, here we are in the Marquesas, ferrying people back and forth with our rowboat. Because other people have gas powered inflatables and there's no gas. So you use them for a few days and then suddenly you have no gas and the next gas is a 70-mile sail to another island. Well, what do you do then? You're not gonna be with those little plastic oars. You're kind of out of luck. So you go into the beach and you find people, could you take us back to our boat? Yeah, we had a lot of fun. We did a lot of wandering about, sailing around islands and rivers and stuff like that.
In your sailing dinghy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um,
How long is it?
it's 12 feet.
Oh.
We have room for a 14-foot boat and that's what'll come with us next time. Because it's your pickup truck.
Yeah.
You're bringing everything with you everywhere and you know, and you're dragging it up the beach and you're dragging it down the beach and you're whatever. Yeah. Okay,
So that sits between the hulls.
yep,
Yeah.
on davits.
Okay.
Yeah, in the first pictures of the
Yeah, I
top,
think I saw
it was
it.
hanging in the
Yeah.
davits. That's in overnight go somewhere mode. Normally it's upside down like that, up against the back of the boat. So I don't have to worry about it filling with water when it rains or anything. It's up against the boat.
Is it rest on a duck board back there or something?
Pick it up on the davits and rotate
Just
it.
rotate it,
Yeah.
and it's still swinging.
It's
Okay.
not swinging, it's tied in place, it's latched. Here it is on the beach, there's me on the beach doing something. So this is an important, this was the first place on the trip that we got to an absolutely spectacular anchorage. Got ourselves pretty well settled in. We were really enjoying this spot. And a cruise ship pulled up and parked right here,
Oh,
directly across, blocking entrance and exit. And spent the whole day ferrying people back and forth with ribs, 10 or 15 ribs. They set up tents all the way along the beach. Little pavilion things with food and whatever, and they were jet skis ripping around. And
Oh, you do it.
it's like, wow, this is cool.
Did you
I
get
guess
free
we
food?
picked
Did
the
you get
right
free food?
spot.
Did you get free food out of that, at least?
What?
Did you get free food?
Yeah.
Walk up
No,
to the tent?
they hate it when cruisers are in a place that they're going to. We are a nuisance, we're in the way,
You're a nuisance.
yes. They are taking, so this particular cruise ship was a National Geographic boat. And they were trying to convince people they were taking them to the remote, isolated, untouched, unspoiled. You know, they're paying $5,000 a day to be on that boat.
Did you go to Galapagos?
Yes, we did.
Maybe it was you, was talking about.
Yes,
these-
we'll get there.
Okay.
This is the first place that this happened,
Yeah.
but it happened everywhere we went. It was either somebody's private super yacht or it was a cruise ship. There are hundreds of super yachts cruising the Pacific with helicopters and 80-foot tenders and every toy you can imagine, right? And they will show up where you are because it's the place to be and feel like they own it. There was one there's a bunch of islands right off here. There was one that showed up that had turbine engines instead of diesels. It sounded like you were at an airport with idling jets sitting there, and it would anchor, half mile off the island, and it had a 90-foot tender that came out of the side, and people got in, and that came close to the beach, and then a tender came out of that.
It's like a movie.
On the beach. It's like, okay, this is. Okay, so after that experience, Katie started doing collages on the beach. So this is sort of the lesson of slow down. We have forever. We don't have to be anywhere tomorrow. We don't have to do anything today. We have a water maker. We have all the water we need. We have solar panels. We have all the energy we need. We have 3 months of food on board. We have 300 books on an iPod, right? We have, hang out, enjoy the place, be there. Most cruisers just rip from place to place to place. Take their little Instagram photo, spend maybe part of the day, and boom, they're off to the next spot, or they're posting their YouTube videos of, whatever it is. So, be prepared to leave your boat fending for itself for weeks at a time. Because when you get places, there's cool stuff there everywhere. And it's terrible to feel like you're trapped on your boat because you've got, in one end, your boat's broken and you have to fix it, which is a lot of people. Or you don't trust your anchor, which is a lot of people. Or you're afraid that they're going to steal everything, people are going to sneak out, or whatever, right? You just kind of have to get over all of that stuff and say, I trust my anchor. I know how this works. I dove down and made sure everything's okay. I have all chain. There's no road to chafe through. And on and on and on. The weather looks fine. I've been watching it. There's places to go and things to do. Slow down, hang out with the people, go places.
Okay, so what's your anchor?
Yes.
Everybody wants to know.
We have a Rockna
Uh-huh.
with 7/16 chain, with 250 feet of that,
Wow,
and we never dragged once the whole trip.
great.
I never had any issues with that. I'll talk a little bit more about anchoring, but I'm ecstatic with that anchoring rig on our boat.
So real
Zero
quick though,
issues.
so, to be able to do that, you have to assume that if something does happen to your boat, you can, so like you just walk to shore with like a credit card, or, what, do you like?
Take your
have-
passport with you,
Yeah.
take
so
your
you-
credit card with you,
Okay, so you take a few things.
take all your boat documentation with you.
Okay, pass,
Right.
yeah, okay.
Right.
So everything you might need.
Because you're gonna pick up provisions on your way back anyway, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna optimize all that.
I don't even like leaving my boat in the San Juans. But,
You
I
know,
just like, and when I walk around, I like to be able to see it. Yes.
yeah, well, that really is something that we are born with, but I have to say, people other places are generally better than we are here. People are actually really lovely out there. And they actually like you to be there if you are nice and try and fit in and be part of their community, instead of parachuting in as rich people and.
Yeah, I'm good
Were you
with that.
ever-
I just, leaving the
Hmm?
boat.
Were you ever concerned for personal boat safety? Were there
No,
any-
the only place we had a problem was on the beach in Mexico, in San Jose del Cabo. We went in for dinner one night and we were in a restaurant, not even a restaurant, we we're outside around a table, getting a meal served. And there was a house 60, 70 feet away that had a major drug lord war suddenly just start right there. Several hundred rounds of automatic weapon fire, people running around in all black, shooting at each other. We were all on the ground on the concrete, crawling back to get behind some concrete
That was
walls.
fairly intense then.
It was super intense. Jennifer's mom was with us.
Then she left.
And she was getting ready to leave the next day to fly back to Indiana. And one of those really confidence building moments.
All the stories you've told to all our friends at home.
But that is the only time that it was not great. Things happen out there in the world. El Salvador, we really, really wanted to go to El Salvador. There's basically one place you can get in and out of the coast of El Salvador. That's it from the outside. I don't know if you surf, but we got there 4 hours before high tide and sailed back and forth, watching this break and break and break and watching where the channel was and counting sets and kind of like, okay, I think I've got this sort of dialed. I think we need to be there and kind of need to do this. We called on the radio. The guys at the inside were supposed to come out and be a pilot. They didn't show up. Even though we kept calling on the radio and they kept answering, they were busy, something else was going on. They eventually came out. We were already on our way in. And that was the first time I've ever passed anybody in a powerboat. So our boat took off on a wave that never broke, but took off and we were doing 22, 24 knots and we just went right by them.
Wow,
They're driving along, looking over their shoulder and all of a sudden we're in front of them.
wow.
We're like, oh, okay.
Did you have your boards up?
We had our boards up.
Um,
We had our boards up, we had all the sails down, we had everything put away and lashed. And I had both engines at 3,000 RPM and the boat like a 3-foot wave. It picked up and just took off. So
Is it always
How
that?
do you have in your auxiliaries?
2 30-horse Yanmars. So the boat motors, just about 6 knots on one. There's no reason to run both unless you have to pick up a wave and go.
We have some friends who I think went into the same place this last year, and they said the pilots guided the group of people before them and actually took them onto the bar. And their boats were destroyed, wrecked.
Yeah.
By this.
Oh,
And it
that's
was like
the
a young guy who was the pilot who hadn't done it before or something. He was
Right.
training.
And not a surfer.
Are those the normal conditions there? Does it ever calm down? Was it extra windy at that time?
It wasn't windy, it was blowing offshore, so that's why you had that great spray and stuff. We live in Willapa Bay, we have a bar, it's unregulated and has no markers. And it moves all the time, and I go in and out of the bar a lot. Not on our sailboat as much, but on powerboats all the time. And you just get to where you kind of get the feeling for how things work. We had 3 hours to just go back and forth and watch and look and think and, pay attention. Far earlier up the coast in Mexico, we were gonna go visit a oyster company in a estuary in San Carlos, I think something. Anyway, same deal. There was a bar and an entrance and stuff. And we got there a little before dusk, a little bit after high tide. Then called them on the radio and they said, we're all going home. Just go ahead and anchor out there. We'll see you in the morning. And I said, we can figure this out. It can't be that bad. And we figured it out. We got in there and we anchored in front of the oyster company and they showed up in the morning and they were just dumbfounded that we were in there.
What is your boat draw?
2 feet 8 inches.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah,
Pretty-
it's, one of those 9-footers is different, different problem.
Yeah.
Um,
And there are no great charts, I think, are there, of the.
there's no charts.
Yeah, okay.
Because it's shifting all the time.
It's moving around all the time, so you really have to use your eyes and, think about it. Go ashore, go explore. We looked for this mott for 3 days. It's a mott kind of bird. We looked for it all the places the mott was supposed to be. We got all the way back to a town, and we were standing in the market in the town, and there's the mott.
Looking for handouts.
And nobody there is paying any attention, right? We're just an area, whatever. Who cares? Provisioning. So this is the first place that El Salvador was the first place that didn't have markets. It had street vendors, basically. And this set of street vendors was 45 minutes by car or bus away from the marina. So you really had to plan ahead and decide that you were gonna, what you were gonna do and hopefully find what you wanted. But this is the first place that we learned the absolute rule: if you see it, buy it. Because you'll come back tomorrow and it won't be there. 100% of the time. If you see it and it's something you want, somebody else wants it too, they will buy it before you come back to buy it. So,
You said you carried 3 months of food on the boat?
Yep.
What was that, dried food?
all the above, everything.
Everything, yeah.
If you could get fresh fruit, we would load the boat up, just load it up. The backpacks we could barely carry, walking for miles and miles with all this fresh food, because you can get it, right? And then you run out because you eat it all and it's gone, and then you really appreciate being able to get it again. Okay, Costa Rica, that's the next place. This is where we learned the general rule of set your expectations as do one thing per day, maybe. Lots of times you do no things per day. You can set out with the strongest goal to get something accomplished, and for a million reasons, it doesn't happen. And you can't get all worked up about that, and you're never going to get 2 things done. So don't even think about that. It's not going to happen. Checking into Costa Rica took 4 days.
Wow.
Got other plans? Not going to happen. Walk in, go to this office, show them all your stuff. And then they say, oh, you need to go there, but they're not open today. Maybe they're open tomorrow. Come back. And you say, oh, that's convenient. It took me 2 hours to walk here from where we are. And it's going to take 2 hours to walk back. And you're thinking they might be open tomorrow. Just have to completely change all of everything and just say, hey, this is how it works. Do it. It's all fine. They're not in a hurry. They're not trying to kick you out. They're not sitting there pounding on your boat at 3 a.m. saying you have to leave because you haven't checked in or whatever. They could care less if you checked. Yeah. Lots of things in Costa Rica where we would get somewhere and we would expect to do something or hope to do something or want to do something, and then realize, it's not happening today. It's probably not happening tomorrow. Maybe we'll get there. It's fine. So we get to Panama, and we're often some islands that are between Costa Rica and the populated part of Panama, and there's nobody there, not a soul on any of these islands, around these islands, nobody around. It's spectacular. Every sunset is like this. We're in dreamland. We've got everything we need. We've got our solar panels, we've got our water maker, we've got food, we're living large. And then the next day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the lightning starts. And it gets pretty epic. And we're thinking, okay, lightning, happens once in a while. From that day forward in Panama, every day at 4 o'clock, the lightning started and went nuts. And by time 2 weeks had gone by, I was a wreck. It's an absolute wreck. Because I was sure that our boat was gonna get blasted and that was gonna be the end of the trip. Right? And it's like, okay, we had planned to spend a long time in Panama. Because there's a lot of cool things to do in Panama. And there was a conflict between every day, bad things happen, and then the next morning, it's spectacular. And it's like, why would you want to be anywhere else? So we finally get to the first marina we get to in Panama. I don't remember the name of it, but we pull in, we tie up to the end of the dock and look around, and something doesn't seem right. And we find out that lightning had hit a boat in that marina the day before, and it fried every boat in the marina.
Wow.
Everybody was plugged in to shore power. Everybody had common connections, so it only took one boat getting hit to wipe out everything.
Geez.
Nice.
Yeah,
Electronics, all that stuff.
unbelievable the stuff that was broken on people's boats. Becca and John, their boat was one that got wasted. They had left it under the care of some other people up the dock.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were just right across from where we pulled in and their boat got fried. Yeah. So, yeah, Panama is spectacular, but for me personally, the risk of being there was just so far off the charts that it was time to leave. So we only spent a month-ish in Panama.
I assume that's seasonal,
No, it's not. It goes all
all
year
year
round.
round.
They're at the
4 o'clock.
equator. Welcome to the equator.
Yeah.
So,
4 o'clock.
general rule, unplug if you're in.
Someone.
General rule,
You don't need to be plugged in.
general rule is, if something bad's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. I don't see any reason to be attached to wires that go everywhere, if you don't have to be. I don't know, the stories about lightning, I'll get to one in just a second. The stories about lightning are infinite. There's fried boats all over the place, including in Ecuador. So we sailed from Panama to Ecuador. This is another bar crossing where the pilot's supposed to show up and doesn't. We've got a river we need to go in. There's a town there that's been destroyed by an earthquake quite a few years before, and all those buildings are actually broken, not for real, and all this stuff. And it's be alert, be flexible. You're in charge of your own destiny. You can figure it out if you just chill out. So here we are. We've made it inside. This boat is charcoal from lightning, from the passage from Panama. American left it there at anchor. This boat, American, left at anchor. The rig got fried and all his fillings blew out of his teeth. Right? He was holding the wheel, boom, his mouth just exploded. Left his boat. That little boat had holes through the hull. You could see into the boat from the outside. No, just lightning blew holes in the sides of the hull.
Above the water.
Above the water lines. So these 3 boats are carcasses left over from the passage from Panama to Ecuador. They left their boats and never came back. This little gaggle of boats is all a group of 5 European boats from Germany and Belgium and the Netherlands that are all in aluminum OVNI expedition, go through the ice, boats, and they're all headed off to wherever. They took up all 5 of the moorings that were there. There's the one club is that little building there on the beach, the one club where boats can actually land a dinghy. And they had 5 moorings and those boats were there, so we just anchored. But we left our boat there. We were there for 3 months, anchored in that exact spot.
Wow.
Traveling around South America and coming back to the boat. Because you could row your dinghy up there, pull it out of the water, walk across the road, and for 25 cents, you could get a bus that would go to the next town 30 miles away, and another 25 cents, get another bus. you could just go anywhere on buses essentially for free. So we started traveling, and had a fabulous time and just left the boat.
What did you like in Ecuador? What was the most interesting thing?
That it goes from sea level to glaciers and it's at the equator. So you can grow every crop that's grown anywhere in the earth somewhere in Ecuador.
Wow.
So when you go to the market, you can just off the top of your head say persimmon, blueberry, orange, banana, spinach, kale, whatever you want. They have it all
Wow.
year round.
Yeah. Did you go up in the mountains then?
Huh?
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. Ecuador was fabulous. And it was amazing to get, you know, any kind of food you wanted. They had it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
You were using the boat as base for the 3 months, or were you? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we'd go for a week
Yeah.
and stay in
Stay somewhere,
hostels and things and then come back and, you know, do a little provisioning, a little fooling around and then go off somewhere else. We had planned to sail to Chile and back. That was our destination plan. But you make decisions as you go, and every decision you make gets rid of opportunities. If you go left, you're not going to go right, and you can't go right anymore. Because seasons move on, times move on, weather moves on. You can't stay any one place forever. Because your permits run out. So we never ended up getting to Chile, but we did get to the Galapagos. So, you know, we work at the University of Washington and we have colleagues that are scientists that work in the Galapagos as their career. And they spent pretty much the whole time before we left telling us not to go there. Because it's way too crowded, way too touristy, way too expensive, way too hard to get all the permits. All of that was true. We spent almost 6 months of our cruising budget just getting the permits to go to the Galapagos.
Jeez.
But we're biologists. How could we sail past the Galapagos without stopping there? Right?
How many months in are you now?
We're in our second year.
Second year.
Yeah. And so we did everything we needed to do to be there and go to the places we were allowed to go to and run our AIS 100% of the time. And, you know, the bottom had to be polished. You had to basically, we spent 2 days at an anchorage in mainland Ecuador preparing the bottom of the boat so it would pass inspection when we got to the Galapagos. Nothing could be growing on it. Nothing. If they found anything when they wiped a rag on it, you don't get to stay, you have to leave. So invasive species are a big deal. And cruising boats are not wanted there because they interfere with the cruise ship business. So there are 350 to 400,000 tourists a year that go to the Galapagos. They fly there on jets. They get carted off to cruise ships. The cruise ships wander from anchorage to anchorage. And there's this ballet that goes on. So you have to be transmitting on AIS all the time. So then you can, and there's repeaters everywhere. So you can see every boat in the whole Galapagos on your display all at once. And it's set up so that every tourist gets to feel as if they're the only people there. So if this is an island, there'll be a cruise ship here and a cruise ship right here, but they can't see each other. And then there's one right there, and there's one right around that point, and there's one right there, and each one of them has 400 or 500 people on it. And they're all just out of sight of each other until 2 o'clock in the morning. And then they all move to other anchorages. And cruisers screw this up, right? Because we're anchored in particular places and they can actually see us and we're not moving. Right? And tourists don't want that. They want to be in the unspoiled. I mean, if I was paying $5 or $7 grand a day per person to be on a boat, I'd probably have some pretty high expectations too, but anyway, we did all the right stuff. We did all the permits. We just had the time of our lives reading Darwin's work and sitting in exactly the same spot and looking at exactly the same animals and plants and saying, well, we got that one wrong. Totally blew that. Oh, that's right. That's cool. That's exactly, and all that stuff. It was great. And this particular day, we had rented bicycles from a bike shop where I bought a spoke. Because I needed a spoke to replace the wire I'd used to lock one of my turnbuckles from spinning. Spokes are great for bending into staples and then bending most of the way closed to stop turnbuckles from spinning. And this guy was was a used bike repair shop, and I bought a spoke there and then went back the next day and asked if we could rent. He didn't rent bikes, he just fixed them for people. But I said, look, can you come up with 3 bikes? Because we'd like to go ride off into the wilderness because we're gonna go try and find some of these, because we know they're there, right? So we go for this ride, and we ride and we ride and we ride and we ride and we ride. No tortoises, none, 0 tortoises. They're not visible. They don't exist. I was convinced at that point that it was a joke. They were all in the Darwin Research Center. They cleared off the islands. Didn't exist. And then it started to rain. And then it started to really rain. The equator giant squall kind of like a cage, just drenched.
Yeah, like I said,
Tortoises only have to drink once a year. When it rains, they come to get their drink. And they go through that brush like it doesn't exist. Like a D5 cat, just mowing down everything in their way. You can hear them half a mile away just to get to the road, because the road has the water pools on the road. It's the only place it does. It's the roads.
wow.
And they've learned that they can, if they haul ass to the road while it's raining, they can get a drink. That tortoise sat there for half an hour. Its head in that puddle. Katie walking around it, looking at it, calling it name. It's like, I don't care if you, I could care less if you exist. I'm drinking, filling up. So we didn't find the tortoise found us.
Pray for rain.
Wait for rain. All right, so then we're off to the Marquesas from there. And this really weird thing happened. We pull into the Marquesas, we get to our first anchorage to go check in. And these people from a French boat that's anchored in the same little bay we're in, come up in their dinghy with these big green things and congratulates us for being there in French. And I don't speak French very well, but thank you, merci. And they drive away. And we're sitting there with these big green things thinking, what are we supposed to do with these? Like, thanks.
Google.
It turns out that they're pomelos or grapefruit.
Grapefruit. That's
Pamplemousse?
the German word for grapefruit, isn't it?
That's the French word.
French
word.
But they're not.
Yeah, they're
The
different.
skin is like this thick. And they're the most amazing fruit on earth.
Largest citrus in the world.
And the sweetest and the most amazing flavor. And it's totally fine to sit on a rock and spend an hour, getting into one and eating it. It just is magic.
Have sections like an orange or?
They do, but they don't pull apart.
Oh.
So nothing pulls apart. You have to just kind of claw away at it or have a knife or whatever, but
Do you think that's why it tastes so good, is like we worked at it really hard? Been there?
we tested that theory with a machete. They taste just as good if you get into it in 2 seconds.
The next question is, do they do the same thing as grapefruit does and play games with certain medications?
Yes, they do. But we don't take medications, so that was one of that's a good point, actually. When we were checking in to the Galapagos, in the incredibly thorough, go through every single cabinet, they went through the entire boat and took everything out of every single cabinet. And we got in trouble for having some cans of food that had passed their expiration date. They yelled at us and confiscated them. Like, you can't get away with anything. But the woman that was in charge of the sort of medical pratique part of it, she asked what medications we take, because all Americans take medications, lots of them, right? And we didn't have anything on board. We had Tylenol and Advil, and that was it. And she got really upset and was convinced we were hiding our prescription medications because there's no way we could be telling the truth and be real Americans without having prescriptions for something.
Wow.
Yeah. So Katie was sitting on that rock, hike in an hour, go to a waterfall, swim in a pool. The Marquesas used to have 40,000 people living there before whaling ships showed up and all the bad stuff happened. And all their building foundations and roads and stuff, they're all still there, all hand stacked rocks. There's islands that have roads entirely, the whole perimeter of the island has a road, say 15 feet wide of hand stacked rocks to walk around the island back in the day. It's mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing. And it's gorgeous. And the anchorages are really rolly. And everybody that showed up in a non-catamaran and even some catamarans and some of the trimarans, Nahi, the F-36.
Yeah.
It was in latitude 38 or whatever, Sailing Anarchy not too long ago. They were there. We crossed paths with them there. They had a hard time anchoring because it would go boom, boom, boom. So they had to pile all kinds of stuff on one side, and then they had to put out 4 or 5 anchors in a spider web to keep it always so the bow was always pointing into the primary swell direction. Great boat, fabulous people, really cool, but anchoring was a total pain in the ass for them. Leaving, coming and going was a giant project.
Wow.
Couldn't just rock in, drop an anchor, pull on it and say, we're good. They had this whole project of dinging to here and dinging to here and dinging to here and dinging.
Because they just wanted the boat to set right.
Yeah, because if
And
they
your
got
boat was-
sideways, it was a mess.
And your
The
boat would
floats were high.
slide to the swell?
Our boat, has mostly no bad habits, but I have a bridle that I built and it's all chain. So there's a nylon bridle that goes down to a anchor, what do you call it?
Chain hook.
Big chain hook, big piece of steel with a slot in it. Right, and you just drop the chain in and then. It mostly sits okay. There were some anchorages I had to put a stern anchor out to stop us from getting kind of in a weird this. But I will say that of all the electronics that we had on the boat, the Vesper Watchmate AIS thing was the absolute coolest pieces of equipment ever. Because you can set it to do anchor watch. And all it does then is draw every 5 seconds a position of where your boat is. So you go in and you anchor, you go in our boat, you go in, motor up to the spot, you want to drop the anchor. We'll get back to that in a second. Hit the down button, here's the anchor button. And then for the rest of the time you're anchored there, it draws a picture of where you've been. So you can see if your anchor's ever moved. You can wake up in the middle of the night when something doesn't feel right and you can realize, oh, we used to be doing this arc. Now we're doing this arc over here. That's why it feels different. Right?
Yeah.
It was mind-bogglingly wonderful. You could come back after a week in Ecuador, come back to the boat, look at the plot and say, look,
Still there.
when the tide was going out, the boat did this. And when the tide was coming in, the boat did this. And that's all it did all week. Great. The anchor's working perfectly.
So when you did that in that particular, are there port captains, you gotta get permission to do that, or you just drop the anchor and leave?
Drop the anchor and leave. Find a place to keep your dinghy on shore that's gonna stick around.
Yeah.
But port captains have a lot of other things to worry about than us. Anchoring, so the next thing, a really good high frequency multispectral depth sounder is a really good investment. So you go into an anchorage and you just drive up and down mapping the bottom. Not just how deep is it, but what is the bottom? Right, and you just spend an hour, you got, right, find the exact perfect spot that you put your anchor. Sand, there's no rocks, there's nothing else there, right? Because if you just drive in and you're looking at a number, it's 28 feet deep, I should put my anchor down now. You know, guaranteed sometime you're gonna have a problem. We had an anchorage in Costa Rica where we anchored. There was a bay, a lovely bay. It was actually the bay that was closest to the place to check in. Customs. There were probably 15 boats already anchored in there, pretty well spaced out. There were a couple, sort of open spots. We anchored thinking everything was fine. And we didn't know that 10 years before there'd been a big hurricane there and there were 25 boats on the bottom in that anchorage,
No.
just littered around. Right, and we happened to anchor next to one, and over the next 4 days, while we were waiting to check in, we wrapped our chain around it a number of times.
Wow.
Take dive gear.
Take dive gear. If you can, I snorkel really well, I can do a lot of depth. I unwrap that. I had Jennifer motoring backwards. I would go down and pull it off something and then come back up, and she just backed us around it multiple times, and then we were out of there. But if you're in the Marquesas, if you're in lots of places, there's coral, there's stuff on the bottom you actually don't want to rip up. You don't want to be an asshole and come in and anchor on somebody else's coral. They fish there, they live there, it's their home. And the worst behavior we saw in cruisers was in this archipelago. People were just so self-absorbed and privileged, and we spend a lot of money to get here, so we get to do whatever we want. We get to anchor anywhere we want. We get to go ashore anywhere we feel like. We get to just walk up into somebody's village and take fruit off any tree we feel like, because we're here and we're important. So yeah, there were lots of times that we ended up having to help people get themselves unwrapped from coral heads that they shouldn't have anchored over there. It's all coral heads on that side. The depth looks okay. You just look at the depth. But 8-minute warning. Getting there, getting good.
Oh, you're doing great. This is amazing.
Passage windows matter. So everybody asks us, wasn't it scary out there, blah, blah, blah. I never saw the entire trip more than 30 minutes of these. That's because we spent the entire time watching the weather. And we didn't go places that we shouldn't be when the weather wasn't nice. Full stop. There's a reason you can't just choose to go anywhere. There's a reason that windows just close. It's time to leave Mexico now. There's gonna be hurricanes. Leave, go south or north, but don't stay.
Did you do that with a routing person, like consulting someone, or you just?
I spent a lot of time before the trip and during the trip learning how to use every tool I possibly
Grid
could.
files, whatever.
All the grid files, downloading everything, using Expedition to do routing, all that kind of stuff.
So you did have routing software?
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you have a Starlink?
No,
Do you,
no
oh, you-
Starlink. We had an Iridium Go.
Did you use Starlink then?
No. It runs, uses 110 volt power, burns 80 watts, 24 hours a day. I mean, that's nuts. That's 3 times as much as your refrigerator. No, I would not go with a Starlink. I will say that every single boat we saw around Vancouver Island had a Starlink. Even ones that didn't have masts. Anchored off in little bays, being pioneers and whatever. Starlink's everywhere now. So no place is sacred anymore. No place is a secret. No place. Every single place that's worth going to has got an Instagram post on it 3 seconds after somebody gets there. Yeah, life is going to change that way. So we sat in this bay for almost a week, waiting for a really nice weather window to sail off to Hawaii. I wanted it to be consistent trade winds, no 30-knot squalls or 40-knot squalls, no giant wind holes, all this stuff, and it was gonna come. Just wait for it, just wait. And finally got that day, and
The distance between here and Hawaii.
between the Marquesas and Hawaii, I think it took us 14 days. It's pretty far.
Was your longest passage?
17 days from Marquesas to Galapagos, which is about 3,000 miles. So this is the day we're gonna leave. You know, we finally got, I've turned on the green light, it's time to go. We're walking from the boat to go get provisions. To here, 3 miles uphill to the top of this ridge, where there's a little farm that has every kind of fruit you'd ever want. And then all the way back. Lots of bananas, yeah, lots of bananas. So here we are, you know, loaded up with fruit, loaded up with food. Katie's downloaded, you know, every library book and thing that she possibly can, and we're sailing now. She's actually on watch in this picture.
How long will those bananas last? I mean,
We were done with them on day 11, I think.
cause you buy them at the market here and they're getting pretty ganky after a week or.
Yeah, if you have a whole forest of banana plants, you can pick ones.
Well, yeah, those are green, aren't they?
Yeah, they're green, and we picked some really green ones, and we picked some
Yeah.
less green, you know, we picked them so that they'd kind of provision us over time. Mid-passage, it's howling. We have that little number 4 up, no other sails. We're ripping along at 8 knots. And this thing appears on the AIS. Which one is it? There is only one.
Fishing nets.
Nope. All these are all linked together and they're all fake. It's spoofing its position. And sending out fake positions all the time. And you can watch all of those all go,
Oh, yeah.
all together.
But I got 6 of them before.
Why?
This is the only one that was real and it doesn't have a label on it. That's the one we just sailed by in the picture before. All the rest of these are fake.
Why is that a bug or are they doing that intentionally?
The Chinese fishing fleet is really doing some crazy stuff with AIS and reporting fishing positions.
But that's not that far, right? Well, the longest one is 6 nautical miles away, so why would they care if somebody knew that they were within 6 miles?
I don't
You didn't ask.
I don't attempt to interpret.
Hello.
I do know we sailed close enough. There were people on the ship that were doing this, trying to get us to come over. So those ships stay at sea forever. Oil tankers come and fuel them. Ships come and bring them food and take away the fish. And the people that are on those boats never get to leave. And they're all over the Pacific. So there was a squid fleet between the Marquesas and the Galapagos. That really was probably 50 boats. And it looked like Los Angeles. We could see it the night before we sailed by it. We could see the lights out there on the horizon. Like, oh my God, there's a continent over here. It was pretty nuts. Hawaii. We went to Hilo Bay, pulled up in Hilo Bay at the Matson terminal, thinking we were going to be there for 3 hours to check into Hilo, and we stayed 2 months. Because partly this boat was in a shed, completely destroyed, hulls apart, rigging all gone, everything just sitting in a shed right that we had to walk by every day when we pulled our dinghy in. And up in Port Townsend, Matt Steverson pulled in 2 days after we did the Hilo, and Chris Moorjohn pulled in also. So there are the 3 of us, and I thought, well, we should help these people out. I asked what happened when all the lashings came apart and all this, you know, they're doing all the traditional stuff. And we said, well, we could fix it for you. We know how to use fiberglass and bolts and all kinds of stuff. We know how to use Cusa board for decking, and we know how to build rudders and a sled for an outboard motor and dagger boards. We know how to do all that stuff. So we spent, you know, a couple months in the shop building all this stuff, getting this boat ready to be useful for them again.
Are those rudders or dagger boards alongside the sled?
These are rudders. There's a dagger board there.
What
Did
year
you
was this?
design
And
that or?
that was the mount for the rudder to,
Yep, so it would pivot up.
oh, a kick-up rudder.
Yeah, they're both kick-up rudders. So we could pull this right up on the beach, right? Because it was up on the beach. We wanted to launch it by literally just pulling it down the beach. Yeah,
So it was supposed to be a traditional
that's what it looks like now
thing,
with it done.
but now it's bolted
We
together.
made it into a catch where everything's bolted together, right? With legit rigging. These are telephone poles. Literally aluminum telephone poles. They're cheap, they're strong, they last a long time. They're easy to get.
It's amazing.
But you did the wishbone boom and all that.
That's actually only on one side of the sail.
Oh,
It's a sprit sail.
That's not part of the original, no, is that the native?
No, the original.
Yeah.
Is that, which was hopeless, didn't work, fell apart, disaster. Right? Beautiful hulls, somebody spent a lot of time and money making a mold. Those hulls were fiberglass and they were made quite well. Everything else was all lashed together bamboo craziness. So anyway, you know, we got really into it, and while this was going on, Katie joined in the local, that was a canoe club, so basically we're on the reservation. That's native American land that the terminal is right in the middle of. And all those people are poor and they live in their cars and they had the canoe in the shed and it was all broken and yada, yada, yada. Oh, it's a huge mess. Anyway, they invited Katie to paddle with them and she started paddling every day and got the girls to learn to swim. Girls aren't allowed to swim, only boys swim. She got the girls to learn how to swim. And they went off and they won races and they ended up going to the state championships.
all right.
Can you tell which one's Katie? Leaving Hawaii. Okay, this is what it's like when it's blowing 20 and you're trying to make tracks and you're going 10 knots and you're flying over waves and you're passing a boat that's left a couple hours in front of you and they take a picture and you look at it and go, oh, that's why it was not very much fun.
Still got a reef pain.
Double reef main. So I was trying to get from Hilo across the slot between the big island and the next island quickly, because it was gonna, the trade winds were building and that's a funnel. And I wanted to get to the other side, so we were moving to get there. And as soon as we got to the other side, the main came down and it was down for the whole rest of the trip.
That's really interesting.
Little comma there.
Except
Yeah,
here.
There were-
except here, that's why.
There was a day, it does exist. There was floating stuff everywhere out there. This is the middle of the garbage patch. I picked a spot to make it look nice. It's possible to swim.
What about the sharks?
So the girls had a great time with me on the boat, and then I went in and had a great time while they were on the boat. They didn't get away, leave me there. And then we sailed home. This is where the boat is now. That's low tide. This last summer, you can see the boat's on the bottom. It's about a foot out of the water, sitting on the keels and rudder. That's where we park. That's where we live. Those are all oyster dredges. We're the only sailboat in the bay. It's a pretty shallow spot. Not very conducive to
Where is that? I mean, where in Washington?
Nakata.
No, yeah.
Just down close to Astoria. Long Beach Peninsula. Local Bay.
So when you got back home, how long did it take you to go back to the boat for that first sail again? Did you just leave the boat for 6 months?
Our house is right across the street from here.
No, but get back on the boat.
Never. We haven't sailed it once since we got back.
Okay.
How many years was that?
5 years ago.
5 years ago. Forget it.
Well,
It was a
I mean,
good trip.
we took this is important, right? We took the time to go on this trip when we were still relatively young.
Yeah.
And we could still do things. And our kid was not having to be, I mean, she's graduating from UW here this next term. We had this window.
Yeah.
That we could fit this in. And we haven't had that window while she's been in high school and college now. She lives with us still. We haven't had the window, but the window opens up in June. Right? Because she's gonna be off doing her thing,
Yeah.
or she'll be with us, either way, but she's not in school anymore. So, you know, I actually went to the boat show. I didn't see any of the rest of you there, but there were some club members wandering around the boat show. To start scoping out, you know, who's got the best price online and who's got this and who's got that.
Not a new boat then.
No, this one, she's perfect for what we do. There's
What's
nothing,
the tidal range in that harbor?
12 feet. Yeah, high tide in the winter. Islands are
And you can sit on the sail drives or,
The sail drives don't go down as far as the rudders do.
oh. Okay, so you're sitting on the rudders?
They're solid Aquamet shafts and solid glass fins with steps on the back edge.
Are they like horizontal
Hmm.
steps or are they?
The steps are little round things like, you know, pear-shaped things. They're actually cut. They slot right into the trailing edge of the rudder.
Hmm.
You just climb right up them.
Yeah.
They're great. It's fabulous. No boarding ladder required.
That help with pitching?
Well, it probably slows the boat down some. I would guess, but the trade-off of being able to climb out of the water whenever you want.
Right.
That's a lot of freeboard, yeah.
It's that's a ton of free, but you're not getting up on the boat. And we had the swim steps just sitting there, so. Who wants to put a ladder over and? If you don't absolutely need it, leave it at home.
Yeah.
We had a weight loss program day. Somewhere, I don't remember where it was, where I took another 900 pounds of stuff off the boat, just so we don't need this.
What do you think of this place is?
It's supposed to be 14.5, I think it's around 16.
And cruising?
I don't know, you have 800 pounds of bananas with you, you can do. You can do just about anything, making it heavy. Yeah, it always does better when it's lighter, right? So
Carbon mast,
aluminum mast,
rotating?
fixed aluminum mast. That's actually a real problem. Because you can't just ease the main. Right, when you're going downwind, the main hits the shrouds.
Yeah.
And so as soon as the wind gets aft of the beam, we never had the main up, ever. Never had to do any jibing adventures downwind. I built the sprit, there was no sprit, it was a symmetrical spinnaker boat with a car on the mast and a pole. I took the pole and made it into a sprit, had Ballard Sails build the code 0 you saw in the very first picture, got an asymmetrical kite, shared the top down furler between the code 0 and the asymmetrical kite, which worked perfectly.
I can say, and then never used them.
We used them all the
Oh, you
time.
did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We used them all the time. I brought a symmetrical spinnaker. I got a FAR 40 kite for $300 that was exactly the right size. You know, the idea, tack it off at both bows and sail dead downwind. We used it for 3 hours, literally 3 hours along the coast of Columbia.
Cause you didn't want to sail dead downwind or?
It never happened.
Yeah.
Like the wind was never going where
Where
we
you
wanted it to go the whole time for 2 years.
Yeah.
So there's a lesson there, right?
I feel like that's less.
A lot of lessons, 2 years,
Yeah.
like a good
Yeah, you have to come to a rendezvous and tell us more stories.
There's a lot
Bring
of
us up.
stories.
Leila, is it time to buy stickers?
Yeah, it can totally be time to buy stickers if you wanna buy stickers. I think the easiest thing to do, I don't even know if,
Alan, any last words?
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome job.
Yeah.
Totally cool.
Thank you. Easy to get a hold of, so my email is alan@trimble.net. So if you wanna ask questions about anything or whatever, feel free.
ALAN.
ALAN@trimble.net.